Hey folks, Zach Osterman here, Even Center, Indianapolis Star, Zion Brown, Indianapolis Star. Indiana 70, no, excuse me, Illinois 70. I knew I'd screwed something up there. Indiana 62, Zion. Listen, obviously a loss, ultimately what you would have expected for Indiana coming into this game. Illinois is in and around the conference title race. This is always a tough place to come. And Indiana would have every right to be frustrated by shooting 0 of 9 from 3, 12 of 22 from the free throw line. But you did feel like Indiana, maybe after the game at least, felt like it had sort of opened a bit of a window for itself into trying to find something in this season. They defended really well. Frankly, it's probably to their credit that it's a game, despite the fact that they're outscored by 21 behind the three-point line, and they struggle so badly from the free throw line. There were building blocks here. Is it too late in the season for that to make a difference? We'll find out. But there were genuine sort of steps forward in this game, I think, especially framed against the last two.
I agree. You get the sense that, of course, this team wanted to win this game. They had it tied at 62 with just over a minute to go. Of course, they would have liked to come out with a win. But I think more than anything, after what happened against Purdue and Wisconsin last week, this team just wanted to come in here in the State Farm Center and compete. And they did that. Defensively, they did what they needed to do for most of the game. They didn't get out-rebounded by such a large margin that it really hurt them throughout the whole game. And they were just there step for step with a really good Illinois team. So I think that's what this team wanted coming into this game. Surely, they're thinking if Kel'el Ware was here, what would this final score have been? Would it have been Indiana winning the game? But, it is what it is. Ware's still out with that right ankle injury. And Indiana was tooth and nail with Illinois. They actually led for most of the game. So I think there's a lot to come away with and say, okay, we can build off this going on the road against probably the second or third best team in the conference right now and taking them down to the wire.
Yeah, Illinois shoots 23 of 62 from the floor. Terrence Shannon had 12 points, but 8 of those came at the free throw line. I think he had 6 free throws in the last minute.
Yeah.
And Indiana was obviously fouling, trying to extend the game. So Indiana did a really good job on him. I thought did a really good job on Coleman Hawkins, who, I'm looking at his number, he was 4 for 12 from the floor. He had 11.7 rebounds. Malik Renew got the better of him until... obviously, Malik Renew fouled out going into the under 4 timeout. I mean, it's... You can kind of split this whichever way you want. On the one hand, after looking just so frustratingly poor against Purdue, against Wisconsin, it probably would have felt good for Indiana to just play well again, do some things well, make the most of a week and a day to prepare for this game. On the other hand, I understand anybody who sort of says, well, but the things that took Indiana down are the things that have been perceived weaknesses a lot of the season. Right. Not a ton of bench production. In fact, I think they only got 2 bench points the whole game.
Yeah.
They struggled a little bit to rebound the ball. It wasn't pronounced today, but, in a game where you are, as you say, it's a tie game with like a minute and 9 seconds left or whatever it is, every little thing counts on the road. Mike Woods is fond of saying you have to play practically perfect on the road to win. The missed free throws, the missed threes, just all those kinds of things. I can understand anybody, I guess, who says on the turnabout that Indiana deserves credit for battling in this game, but they did lose for the reasons that, they've ultimately struggled.
And they sure did. And you just had you had Xavier Johnson, who played his best game probably that he's played since he's come back from injury, either that or the Ohio State game.
Either this or Ohio State.
Pick your choice. But he shot 2 of 7 at the line, and he's a guy that came into today shooting 77% at the line. Yeah. So you have those minor things like that just make the difference as you get down the wire to the game. And then I felt like at the end of the day, it came down to Illinois just having guys that can hit shots at the end. And with Malik Renew out, you didn't have that guy for Indiana who could do that. Mackenzie Mbako hit a big mid-range jump shot, but if you think of all of the other IU buckets down the stretch without Renew, they were off assists. They weren't players making the play for themselves. It was Mbako passing it in down low to Anthony Walker, who was open under the hoop. It was Anthony Lill cutting and getting a bucket. But we saw the last possession, or one of the last possessions rather, when Anthony Lill tried to drive and he just kind of lost the handle and everything. That's not his game. That's not really anybody besides maybe Mbako and Renew's game on this team. You see how that broke down there near the end.
Mackenzie Mbako, first of all, Malik Renew leads all scorers, 21 points. He also had 7 rebounds, which I think was like the second best on his team. I thought it was Mackenzie Mbako's best game, and that's a weird thing to say when he's 0 for 3 from 3. He's 4 of 14 from the floor. But it was as engaged and as sharp as I think he's looked all season defensively. Between kel'el Ware being out again, Mike Woodson, I guess, just a quick update on that, saying he had to try and get him on the floor Sunday. Doesn't know if he'll be ready for Iowa Tuesday, but they at least think they might be ready to kind of step up his activity level soon. But with kel'el Ware out, knowing Illinois is a pretty good rebounding team, even when they play small.
Yeah.
Mbako 12 rebounds tonight, a game high, a career high, his first double-double. It just felt like, we've talked about kind of the way the offensive game has come along for him. It felt like it was everything else tonight that looked a lot more settled, a lot more comfortable, a lot more natural. And, again, maybe it's too late. Maybe this team doesn't have enough runway to land the plane this season, but that feels like another building block potentially toward this team getting to a competitive level where it can start adding some of the wins it needs.
Yeah, and when we talk about Mbako, that's a guy I looked at and I said he knew what was needed out of him in this game on the defensive end. You mentioned it. Without Ware and this Illinois team, despite being, a small team, I say small in quotation marks because they're not big up top. Coleman Hawkins only 6'9", 6'10", but every player on their team is 6'5" to 6'10".
But they play small. They space you out. They don't post up very much.
Right.
They operate around the perimeter rather than Indiana is a team that very much goes inside out.
Right, and so knowing that kel'el Ware would be out, Mackenzie Mbako still answered the call. I think this was the least lost he's looked defensively all season long, as far as just being on the back line, communication, making the rotations that he needed to make. And then he got in there, he got his hands dirty and got those 12 rebounds against a really strong rebounding team. Illinois came into today with the same offensive rebounding percentage as Purdue did. And of course, they have Zach Edey down low and Trekoff and Renan often playing at the same time. So for Indiana to not, like we said, to not get dominated on the boards, for Mackenzie Mbako to have his strongest rebounding game that he's had all season, it shows that he's starting to get it. He's starting to pick up some of the defensive concepts and just the overall effort and awareness that is needed from him on the defensive end.
I think all of this, and this is true most of the time, so this is hardly groundbreaking when we'll finish here, but all of this is colored by what comes next.
Yes.
In a weird way, we've talked about Indiana doesn't have any quad one wins, and they've still got to go looking for some of those, obviously. But I think it actually probably helps Indiana to go back home now. The next two are at home. You've played, your last two obviously on the road, and a tough 3-game stretch. You're basically playing essentially the conference championship race, more or less, in Purdue, at Wisconsin, at Illinois. Now you get your next two at home. If you can sort of weaponize Assembly Hall, you can build on this. It's not at all hard to see them beating Iowa, which is something they've never done under Mike Woodson, and then obviously Penn State. And then maybe you feel like you've got a little bit of wind back in your sails. You go to Ohio State, you go to Purdue. You start to approach maybe some of those quad one opportunities in February with a little bit more confidence. Again, I know Mike nice. I know Mike always likes to joke about the must wins and things like that, but it does feel like this is kind of Indiana's last chance to build upward in this season when it comes to sort of the momentum, the confidence, and turning that into results. It feels like this kind of has to be the hinge point on which this season swings up.
I think it certainly is. You mentioned it. Iowa and Penn State this week. Those are actually two teams that Mike Woodson hasn't beaten since he's been here. 0-4, I believe, against Iowa. Now 0-3 against Penn State.
They beat Penn State. They beat Penn State his first year
at home.
Yeah.
Okay.
1-3. They shot the lights out of the ball.
Kind of out of
nowhere. Yeah.
So 1-3 against Penn State. Lost to them twice last year. Once in Penn State, then again in the Big Ten tournament. So two teams he's a combined 1-7 against, and so. Obviously, both teams, especially Penn State, are extremely different than they have been in the past. But still, it's just, a couple of rosters and makeups that the Indiana team has struggled against. They've struggled against the pace and the way that Iowa plays. So rebounding from this game and saying, okay, we built something good here, but being able to come back and say, let's get a win at home again and try to go 2-0 this next week before they go to Ohio State the Tuesday after that. This is, the turning point, or as far as just the last straw, as you kind of put it. Just if you lose that game against Iowa, it is kind of just all downhill from there. But if you win that game, you still look at it and you say, okay, let's string together some more wins. Maybe we finish 500 or slightly above 500 in the Big Ten, and then who knows what happens from there. But they've got to come out in that game on Tuesday and really show that they're good enough to beat an Iowa team that's not that good this year. They're good enough to beat that team in Assembly Hall.
We'll leave it there. Zion Brown, Zach Osterman again. Indiana 62, Illinois 70. Hoosiers are 12-8, 4-5 in the Big Ten. Iowa Tuesday night, as the man said. We'll be there. Until then, stay warm, stay safe. For the Indianapolis Star, we'll talk to you soon.